G'day guys, welcome back to the Life Outside podcast. My name is Cam Bostock and I'm very happy to be with you all today. For those who are new here, welcome. Hope you enjoy this week's episode. And if you guys do enjoy, a quick reminder before we get started to follow, subscribe, and rate the show 5 stars as well wherever you are listening. Really appreciate all the support lately. It's been incredible. On this episode, I chatted to Madison Blagden. Madison just wrapped up a mind-blowing year of hiking in 2025. She became the first woman to complete the border-to-border calendar year Triple Crown. That's over 10,000 miles of walking on the Pacific Crest, Continental Divide, Appalachian, and Florida trails, all in under 12 months. Ridiculous. In this chat, Madison shares her journey into thru-hiking, why she decided to spend an entire year walking an average of almost 30 miles per day, and the ins and outs of completing such a logistically complicated and physically demanding challenge. We hope you enjoy. G'day, Madison. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm super well. Very grateful to have you on the Life Outside pod. You've been outside a fair bit over the last 12 months. Well, really over the last half decade or so. You like to walk. That's probably the sort of theme with you in an outdoor adventure. Last year, you walked over 10,000 miles across trails in the US, particularly the US Triple Crown, border to border, all within a calendar year, which for people that don't really understand that context, that's a crazy thing to do. How are you feeling kind of being on the other end of that, a couple of weeks removed?
Yeah, it's a funny thing because the entire year you're dreaming about the day when you can finally take a day off or a bunch of days off. And then you're home for a week and you still get that exact same feeling I feel like a lot of people get, where you feel guilty about sitting around and even just spending a week or something lounging around. But it's nice to slow down.
That's crazy that you still get that feeling even after the sheer amount of miles you did. I've done the math and a bit of stats because I wanted to give people some perspective of what you've done. So you border-to-border calendar year Triple Crown, which is the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. You walked 10,070 miles in 2025, which is just over 16,000 kilometers for my non-Americans, which is a fair few of you listening. That's an average of 27 miles a day, every single day, 365 days in 12-month period, which I assume you slept for about 8 hours a day. It's like 2 miles per hour every waking hour for a whole year. Like,
oh wow, I've never done that now.
Yeah, I went down to the hour. It's crazy. Like people always message me. They're so amazed at how far I walk and all these places I go, and I'm spending sometimes weeks out in the wilderness. And I always tell people there's, I have that same feeling about other hikers, and there's always a bigger fish, and I feel like you're like the final boss of miles in the wilderness, and it's just, when you break down the numbers like that, you were moving 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers per hour every waking hour of the year. Did you ever get sick of it at any point?
Not really. I think the times when I was more tired of it was just when you were in some particular routine, either for like a month or maybe a couple months or something, where the schedule was particularly strict. There were a couple of times when, just because of weather or whatever, that it was just this never ending huge miles every single day with absolutely no time for a break. And you're definitely looking forward to, I would always have that next day in mind, 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out of, okay, once I get to here, I can finally chill out for half a day or whatever. It's kind of the closest to sick of it I got, I guess. But it definitely wasn't all a blast.
Sure. I mean, I feel like you've got to enjoy walking a fair bit to even want to attempt something like the calendar year Triple Crown. As far as I know, you're the first woman to do it, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, from border to border. There are 2 women who've done the calendar year Triple Crown, and actually a girl reached out to me who was on trail this year who did the calendar year Triple Crown, just not from border to border.
So what's the clarification there with border to border? The Appalachian Trail obviously doesn't go from Mexico. Is that right?
Yeah, like the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail go Mexico to Canada, so like border of the
Hmm.
US to the other border. But the Appalachian Trail starts in Georgia and ends in Maine, so it doesn't start at either end. So you just add a little mileage up to Canada and then like the whole state of Alabama and Florida to get to the other end.
Okay, and that's just adding the whole state of Alabama for it. That's like a fair
Yeah.
bit as well. It's not just like a walk in the park. So, well, first of all, congrats. That's really incredible. I'm interested to hear where sort of long distance walking and through hiking started for you. I know you've walked all three Triple Crown trails prior to this calendar year Triple Crown, so you've doubled up now, which is wild. That's a lot of total miles. I think you stepped foot onto the PCT, way back in 2017, 2016. And clearly you enjoyed it or you were hooked because just a couple of years later you came back to the PCT and then you completed your Triple Crown over 3 years. What was that first backpacking experience like? What brought you out onto the PCT for the first time? What kept bringing you back?
The PCT is just the classic, your first love. I feel so nostalgic about the PCT, but I had no, besides maybe one or two overnights as a child, I had no camping or backpacking experience before the
Wow.
PCT. I knew someone who had done Katahdin and they talked about the Appalachian Trail. And I'm from the East Coast. So that was kind of where I was from, but I'd never even heard of the Appalachian Trail until I was in college. And yeah, just was part way, maybe like more than halfway through college and started to wonder what I really wanted to do and just sort of on a whim decided to take a semester off and buy all the gear and go hike the PCT, even though I had no idea what I was doing at all.
Yeah, wow. And so were you nervous getting on trail for the first time? You obviously hadn't experienced much of that type of thing before, which I feel like is fairly common. I did the PCT in 2024, and I talked to a fair few people that this was like their first backpacking trip, or at least one of the first few. And there's always a mixture of nerves and excitement, and just a lot of learning, especially in those first couple of weeks. Was that sort of what happened with you?
Yeah, I feel like there's a magic in that ignorance where
Mm,
you're almost not even as nervous as you should be because you know so little that you don't even know what
mm,
you should be scared of. And like
sure.
2017, that was the record snow year for the PCT until a few years ago. So if I had knowing now, I wouldn't want to repeat that year and the snow conditions. But going out there then, I just don't even think I fully understood how sketchy some of the stuff was.
Yeah, that's so true. Like that sort of ignorance can almost be a good thing of not knowing, because you just go for it and you're not sort of put off by those things that might put you off before due to inexperience. Do you feel like, coming back to the PCT multiple times now and all these other long trails, do you lose a little bit of the magic, or you lose anything compared to that first time when you started and it was like this magical thing and you didn't know what was going to happen, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's just something you can never get back to from your first hike, I think. Especially first hike when you aren't experienced and you're in the tramley of the other people who are in the same boat as you. There's something about that you'll never get again. But I don't know what it is about the PCT. It has that magic for me every time I'm out there. I was just
Yeah.
thinking about it just the other day. It's almost impossible to think about never going back out onto that trail again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have the exact same feeling, and people who have listened to the pod know that well and truly. And I mean, I'm coming back to the US this Northern Hemisphere summer actually, and so I'm gonna fill in a couple of little gaps I've got on the PCT, so I'll get a taste of it again this year, which will be really nice. But I have that same feeling about the first long trail I walked here in Australia. It isn't as beautiful as the PCT. It doesn't have the same community as that trail. Isn't epic as like Teatro or some of the other trails I've done. But I have this nostalgia about it because it was just my first foray into backpacking, and I didn't know what to expect. And it was really hard, but it was a great challenge. And I walked with my mate, and we just had such a good time, and it was a real bonding experience. And for that reason, like the Bibbulmun track and that first trip is probably like it's always going to be my favorite trail, just because that's where I kind of dip my toes in, and the rest is sort of history. So how did that first PCT experience go for you then? That you said there was a record snow year, which obviously meant it was fairly challenging. I don't know if you were able to
Yeah.
get through the Sierra Nevada or not, but it would have been
It
pretty
went
wild.
shockingly well, considering when you hear the details, you'll know that it's surprising. I had a May 18th start date at
Whoa,
the southern
okay.
terminus, so
I
southern
had a
in the
record snow year.
desert, late May. Which hindsight, the desert was so hot and it was insane. Just that was a whole brutal thing. But then by the time we got to the Sierra, it was like July, started
Wow.
July. I think I was at Canyon Meadows around the 4th of July. So it was still insane snow, but we were able to have all the gear do, 15 maximum mile days and time everything for like the mountain passes, hitting them in the morning and trying to hit the river crossings when they were lower because the river crossings were, that was like the really bad year for the PCT
Right.
for river crossings. And I made it all the way to Bucks Lake, which is like 1,300 miles, almost halfway. But it goes to show how little I knew about through hiking as I'd allotted myself that amount of time. And I just figured, oh, I'll just do the whole trail in like 90 days. Never hiked before record
Right.
snow year. So I finished there. My whole family actually got off for a bunch of different reasons. And I went back to college.
Yeah, right. So you got through the Sierra. That's incredible.
Yeah.
The year I did it, it was a pretty forgiving snow year. Like we didn't really have any issues. The river crossings were all low. It's weird. Like you hear all these stories. I think 2023 or 2022 was another huge snow year. So we had been hearing all these stories about how hectic it is when it's bad, and then we walked through, and it was just like the most chill experience ever.
Yeah.
Every river crossing was low and easy. The passes were all snowed over, but very manageable. Um, I almost want to experience the other side of it, but at the same time, maybe not, because a lot of people end up having to skip or, God forbid, get rescued. But it sounded like you were kind of thrown into the deep end, which maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you were forced to grow, and in that way, you sort of fell in love with the experience. Did you meet your trail family like early on, or did you like know anyone prior to getting on trail that you walked with?
I didn't know anyone prior to getting on the trail. And I didn't even realize there were so many people out there. I wasn't expecting
Mm,
to see a lot of people. I had just done like really the most bare bones research you could do. But within the first 100 miles, I linked up with one guy and then we got another guy and another guy. And myself and three other people did pretty much like over 1,000 miles together. Yeah.
yeah, crazy. Are you still in contact with those guys? Because like the trail just it bonds people, doesn't it?
Yeah. One of the guys is from the UK. And we're like, you're still Facebook friends and everything like that. But
Yeah.
one of the guys actually works at the Thunderhead Brewery in Cascade Locks. And I
Oh,
saw
cool.
him either 2 or 3 times this year. I can't remember because I flipped up to Cascade Locks to do Washington. So maybe 2 times. But I got to see him both times I was in Cascade Locks this year. And that's crazy. I was telling him, I'm like, the version of myself who is that baby through hiker who'd never hiked before, he's the only person left who knows that person. Like she doesn't
Mm,
exist anymore, but it's just, yeah, it's crazy spending time with him because that's the closest that I ever get to be back in and be that person.
yeah, that's wild. Yeah, and you've shared so many incredible memories, I'm sure. We'll get into the first Triple Crown and then the second one, but that reminded me to ask, that baby version, that baby through hiker, that was PCT number one, compared to you now as a person and a through hiker. Like, what are the things that have changed in you, in life, but also, in trail and hiking? Because the trail just transforms. It creates a new version of you. You find out so many things about yourself. And when I look back at me before backpacking and then now after a fair amount of miles, it's a completely different human being with different confidence levels and abilities and all aspects of life. I'm interested to hear after 20, 30,000 miles, whatever you've walked, some of the changes you've noticed when you look back.
Yeah, I love looking back at that, and that's a fun thing because you're a different version with every adventure. So even just thinking about finishing the Triple Crown and then that was at the end of 2024. And then this year, I feel so far from the person who started this hike in like January of 2025. But it's the confidence, like you said, it's just crazy how when you just have to be ready for anything all the time, and you get so comfortable thinking on your feet, and you're not even nervous after a while about whatever's going to happen, because you can think of your own little mental resume of all the things you've
Yeah.
navigated around, and you're like, well, that time was crazy and I was fine. And then that person gets off trail, and then you're in regular life, and it's just, I just feel so laid back all the time. Just, yeah, just this confidence and comfort, and that there's just really no, what situation could you possibly not get through if you just, yeah, just tough it out.
Yeah. That's a common theme with a lot of my guests is like you go through, through hiking is hard, especially some of, the Triple Crown and some of these ultra long trails, the stuff that's going to happen that's going to challenge you. And for those who finish and overcome those challenges, I love the mental resume picture that you sort of painted there. Like you build up this resume in your head of things that you've done, and you're like, I've done some crazy stuff, and I'm pretty sure I can do anything else that sort of life throws at me. And it's a powerful thing. It's why I tell people you've got to thru hike, or you've at least got to go backpacking, because it just builds such a confidence in yourself, which is just it's missing. It's missing in a lot of people, I think,
Yeah.
these days. And there's plenty of avenues to sort of gain that self confidence as well. But thru hiking is just a pretty fun one to pursue.
Yeah. Have any of the options?
Yeah. So you got off at Bucks Lake in 2017, and then took a few years for you to come back. Did you come back to the PCT because you were like, I've got to finish this damn thing? Or was it just like, did you have the mindset of like, I'm going to do the PCT now and then do the other two as well? Or was it just like, I got to get my revenge on this trail?
It was really just the PCT. And yeah, initially the other trails were maybe in my mind, but not really. Yeah, I just wanted to get out there and finish it. And I wound up doing like a flip flop, because I was like, there's no way I'm hiking the first 1,300 miles again, and then something happens and I can't finish it. So I did the other 1,300 miles first. And then when I reconnected my path, I just kept going and finished the rest of it too.
So did you go southbound? Did you from Canada?
I did a weird flip flop. I had a southbound permit, but 2022 was a particularly high snow year in Washington. So at the last second, I switched my permit and started in Truckee. So I got on, like, I redid a little bit of mileage right off the bat that I'd already done, but just went north from there and then wound up flipping back down.
Yeah, interesting. And so you successfully did the PCT in 2022. How was that experience different to the first one? Obviously getting to halfway roughly to Bucks Lake, and then this time completing it in a bit of a flip-flop fashion. How do they compare?
Yeah, it was really different in a lot of ways. It's funny because even your second through hike or whatever, you have this new confidence, but I didn't really have the resume to back up whatever I thought I had going on. But it was a lot of fun. I kind of went out too hard at the beginning because I jumped right on trail with a bunch of seasoned hikers who had 1,000 miles under their belts. So got injured like almost immediately. And that's actually, I got trail named in 2022 because I got injured like week one hiking with all the northbounders. Yeah, it was a great year. A lot of fire issues. That was one of those years where like basically all of NorCal and Oregon got closed down. But I got to do the Sierra with no snow. So that was a fun difference from 2017.
Yeah, awesome. What's your trail name?
Peg leg.
Peg leg. Okay, that makes that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
with that context then. Yeah, nice. Yeah, injuries are fairly common in thru hiking, and a lot of the reason is with what happened to you. Like that's fairly common, right? Trying to keep up with people, or maybe just hiking a bit outside of your fitness.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good lesson that you learnt on PCT 2022 that you've taken with you over the last few years as well, of building up sort of mileage a bit slower, because you can unlock the fittest, most enduring person and version of yourself through hiking, but it's also very easy to overdo it and overcook it early. end up being called peg leg.
Yeah, pretty much forever.
Yeah. So you finished the PCT then, and I'm guessing you were like hooked. Maybe you had you heard about the other two trails from other hikers or whatever. And when did you decide you're like, I'm going to pursue the Triple Crown?
So I finished the PCT. They started December 2023, and then I
December.
started
Wow.
the Appalachian Trail the next spring. But
Mm-hmm.
the next year I wound up doing the ECT, so Key West to Newfoundland, with a little bit of jumping around in there too. But yeah, I just got off the PCT and did not want to stop. So I just found all the things to piece together so I didn't have to stop.
So you said a couple months break, and then not just the Appalachian Trail yet, decided to add a couple thousand miles onto it. I don't hear many people talk about doing the ECT, but that's that's a long route. Does it go up into Canada?
Yeah, it goes 1,500 miles into Canada.
Yeah, geez. That's so. I'm interested to know why more people don't do that over just the Appalachian. I guess the Appalachian Trail is just such an iconic, 2,000 odd miles that people just want to do that. But the idea of extending it across the entire continent and further seems pretty badass. I mean, does that make it longer than the CDT?
Oh, yeah, it's 5,600 miles.
56. Yeah, geez. So what was that like? Because I can't imagine there were too many other people doing the ECT that year. I'm sure you met plenty of thru hikers on the various trails that it connects, but you were in one of the few doing the whole thing.
Yeah, it was cool. I was in the bubble on the Appalachian Trail and hiked with two guys for the entire time, pretty much, which was awesome. I hiked with two guys and a husky for 1,700 miles
What?
of the AT, which was kind of a
What?
blast. And then I started down in Alabama and went to Newfoundland, and then when I finished up in Canada, I went back and did Florida, just because I wasn't intending on doing the entire thing. It just kind of took on a life of its own. But I wound up in a tramily in Canada. There's like only 5 people did the ECT, and 3 of us were in Canada at the same time. So we did the entire Canadian portion together, which was awesome. Yeah, but otherwise would
Yeah,
have been
wow.
pretty lonely trail, I can imagine.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a lot of your thru hiking in trail families. Do you like walking alone, or do you prefer having sort of that social aspect and people to lean on as you walk?
I really like walking alone. It was kind of one of my favorite parts about this year, or the thing I was looking forward to the most before starting, is just having a year where you get to be incredibly selfish. Like
Yeah.
everything about your schedule is, I have to do this, I have to do that, I want to see other people. But if you're not doing exactly what I'm doing, then we can't hike together. I loved that, but I really do like hiking with people. It's more fun, or it can be more fun hiking with people, but it's easier to get miles than when you're by yourself.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, there's massive positives to both. I love being selfish with my schedule when I'm through hiking because yeah, if you want to push big miles, which not everyone does, you do get a little bit limited. But then I've learned more and more that I love hiking with people as well over the last couple of years, and yeah, it's interesting. I've been more and more willing to make the sacrifice of miles just to have that sort of social experience. I think it's coincided with me coming out of my shell a bit more over the last years. So when I was really introverted, I still am introverted naturally, but when I was like had a bit of social anxiety and all that kind of stuff as well, I was like, yeah, I'm just quite happy to be alone in the wild for weeks and months and not see anyone and push hard and do my side trips and not have to sort of like rely or have any expectations with other people. But yeah, the PCT brought out a different Cam, I think, because that trail would have not been the same without the people I walked with, and still some of my best mates to this day. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting comparing both, and you obviously experienced a lot of the solo stuff this year, so you have a pretty good idea of both sort of angles as well on trail.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hiking with people again. It's one of the best parts at
Mm.
the end of the year. I ran into the southbound bubble of CDT hikers, and it was the first time when I had a teeny bit of flexibility. And I did 2
Mm-hmm.
short days with a group of literally 20 hikers, and just
Whoa.
like braked and waited for the horde of people to catch up, and just like burnt time, and it felt so good to just, yeah,
Yeah.
just cozy and you do their thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to have a bit of both. I'm glad you got a couple of moments like that in 2025. How long did the ECT take in 2023? Because it doesn't sound like you had a whole lot of downtime between your first Triple Crown, even though it was over a 3-year period.
The ECT, the funny thing is it took 322 days. So
Wow.
yeah, I started the end of February of 2023, and then I finished in the early January of 2024. It took longer to do the ECT than it took me to do the whole border to border calendar year Triple Crown this year.
That is a crazy stat. Wow.
But I obviously wasn't in as much of a rush in
Yeah.
2023. But yeah, I did 8,400 miles 4 days faster this year than 5,600 miles in 2023.
Jeez. So you finished the PCT December 22, started the ECT February 23, finished that January 24. When did you start the CDT to complete the Triple Crown?
June. I want to say, yeah, June of 2024. I was a real
Okay.
person for like 5 months, and I worked
Hmm.
and lived in Philadelphia and then got
Okay.
back on trail.
You were integrated for a little while. And
Yeah.
then I'm assuming you went southbound on the CDT then.
Yeah.
Okay. And that would have been pretty special, finishing the CDT and the Triple Crown after hammering pretty hard for the previous 3 years to get it done.
Yeah. And this CDT is it's like the PCT, just incredible views, really cool.
Hmm.
And I was expecting it to be super solitary just because of the way people talk about it. And there just wound up being a big bubble at the start and a big bubble at the end. So it was pretty fun the whole time.
When you finished the CDT, did you have a favorite of the three? Like they were all pretty fresh in your mind, I guess. Like you had the nostalgia factor of the PCT, and obviously you'd been on that trail a couple of times. But did you have one in particular you preferred?
I think that the PCT is probably still my all-time favorite trail, but my favorite sections of any of the Triple Crown trails are on the CDT. If that's
Yeah.
if that's
Okay.
not like cheating.
No,
Yeah,
that make. I'm into what sections?
I did the Teton Crest Trail when I was on the CDT, and we did the Wind River High Route.
Hmm.
So like everything south of Yellowstone, it was just we did the Gravant Wilderness, just a bunch of little side quests and alternate routes, and that was just some slow going and kind of tougher terrain, I guess, at times, but it's probably the most beautiful hiking I've ever done.
That's super cool, and it would have been pretty wild in some of those parts as well, which is always pretty special, just being away from civilization and life. I think I'm hoping to hike the Colorado Trail this year as well, actually, while I'm in the
Nice.
US. So I'm really looking forward to experiencing some of that country a bit further east than the PCT, because that's all I've sort of seen up until this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've talked to a few people who have done the CT and also the CDT, and it sounds very, very special. This episode of the Life Outside podcast is proudly brought to you by OptiVenture, the world's first all-in-one supplement specifically designed for outdoor adventurers. It's been my favorite health, performance, and recovery tool for the last couple of years, both in training and while on trail. It's super simple. Just take 3 sunrise capsules each morning for sustained energy and to help optimize gut health, immunity, and mental clarity, and then take 3 sunset capsules at night to help sleep more deeply, recover more efficiently, and keep inflammation low. I've used it on long trails like the Pacific Crest, as well as on my Bibbleman track fastest known time completion, and I also just use it in my daily life as it replaces more than 10 individual supplements. It's simple, comprehensive, and built for my adventurous lifestyle. If you want the easiest, most effective way to stay healthy, perform well, and recover faster both on and off the trail, I can't recommend it enough. Head to optiventure.co and use Life Outside for 10% off your order. All right, let's get back into today's episode. Take me to January 1st, 2025. Did you start on the 1st of January?
Yeah, I flew down
Yeah.
to Florida on New Year's Eve, and myself and a bunch of other hikers spent the night in Key West on New Year's Eve.
So wait, when did you finish the CDT? Because there can't have been much time between that and the start of the calendar year Triple Crown.
I finished the CDT November 7th,
Wow.
2024. Flew to Denver and then flew back to Mass, packed my things, moved to Philadelphia for 5 weeks to work because I was like, you need to work. You need to work as much as you can. Missed Christmas and then flew home to see my family and just flew immediately to Florida to start.
Wow. So just less than 2 months. I guess you held on to quite a bit of fitness from the CDT then, which helps when you need to average 27 miles a day for 365 days. You can start off with a bang, I guess, and not have to ease into it.
That was it was kind of
typically
perfect.
Would. Yeah. So take me to mile 1 of the calendar year Triple Crown. What were your thoughts, your feelings, knowing what you had ahead of you? Were you mostly just super pumped to be out there for a whole year?
I was really excited, and the energy, it's hard to describe. There was just this incredible energy. I mean, it was 8 or 9 hikers who I'd met on all different trails, or people who worked at hiker hostels. Just this big group of friends from the community all came out to hang out, hike some miles together. Maybe a couple people had the intentions of maybe trying to go as far north with me as they could. And then on day 1, I ran into another person who was also doing the border to border calendar year Triple Crown, which we just started the same day. And I mean, only one person had ever done it before that. So it was just a funny coincidence that we both set out to do the same thing. Yeah, and it was just exciting. It's fun. And you're just road walking for the first couple 100 miles in Florida. So yeah, it was a blast. There was just this, magical energy, but initial, you just had a schedule, and I was like, there's tons of friends around, but I need to stick to this schedule. I need to hit a certain mileage every day, and just hoping that maybe I'll get to hang out with people, but probably not as much as I want to.
Yeah. Talk to me about the schedule, because if you have to average 27 miles a day for 365 days, that doesn't take into account any rest days. And clearly you're going to want to have a couple of rest days here and there in some towns, and you're going to have, travel days. I'm assuming you flew between trails at certain points as well. That brings the daily average mileage closer to 30 a day. How did you plan it out? Did you have an itinerary of exactly the kind of miles you wanted to hit each day, especially towards the start?
I didn't want to go out the gate too hard, or at least I was kind of being flexible with myself at the beginning, that if I didn't start doing 30s, that was totally fine. The goal is just maximum mileage every single day. Don't take days off unless you need to. Try not to push yourself so hard that you have to take days off. But the surprising thing was that I think the 5 or 6 weeks off between the CDT and January 1st was just this perfect amount of time that my body didn't really lose much, but it healed and rested, because I hit the ground day 1 and I averaged 30 miles a day for the first 5 weeks. So it just got into a really good routine, feeling good, able to kind of crank those road miles out and still have some short days, and avoided taking zeros and stuff. And set a good tone in Florida, honestly, which was probably a huge help for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you basically just got to tell your body, this is what we're doing, get used to it, and hopefully it kind of comes along for the ride with you, because any sort of major injuries, it's going to screw up the year pretty bad. Like if you're out for even a week, that really puts you pretty far behind. But yeah, it does sound pretty perfect. I'm sure you sort of planned it this way, where you had that little break in between the CDT and the calendar year, and your body was able to probably get back to 100% while retaining a good chunk of the fitness that you built up. At what point did you decide you were going to do this, by the way? Because you had obviously been hiking predominantly most months of the year for the last 3 years. You finished the Triple Crown. What what makes you decide, I want to do this again, but in 1 year?
I had actually started thinking about the calendar year Triple Crown kind of, when you're on trail and you have nothing else to think about. So you're just sort of just
You make
fantasizing,
plans. Yep.
daydreaming. You're like, oh, what's the
Yeah.
craziest thing I could think of? So when I was in Florida finishing the ECT, I didn't actually know if a woman had ever done the calendar year. I was curious what like the most miles in a year was. So I looked that up, and that's when I realized that there are two women had done the calendar year, but no one besides Professor Carl had ever done it longer. And I almost didn't do the CDT in 2024 because I knew that I wanted to do this. And I just figured
Right.
there's no way I could do both. And then my friend called me and was telling me all these other people who are going to be on the CDT. I was like, you can't miss it. Everybody's going to be there. Yeah, I was just like, whatever, I'll do the CDT. It'll be good. I'll learn a bunch about the trail, and I'll just somehow hope that I can line up finishing it and still doing the calendar year Triple Crown.
Yeah, right. So it worked out. It worked out pretty much perfectly, I
Yeah, it
guess.
did.
Yeah, coming to 2025 hot, and it sounded like it started well. Was your mindset pretty consistent and stable throughout? Like, I'm really interested. Like, I've done a lot of big miles, and did a FKT last year, and it wears you down. I'm interested, like the ebbs and flow of your motivation, of your drive, of your willingness to push each day. I'm sure there were days where you're like, I do not
Yeah.
want to get up this morning. I do not want to walk another 30 miles. How were those first couple of months like on the Florida Trail, and then further north?
Yeah. There's kind of an interesting structure to the year. The joke in the beginning of the year, because I did all of Florida, Alabama, got to the AT and did some of the AT with the other guy doing the border to border calendar year. The
Mm,
mileage pace just it lined up perfectly, when you just don't have to force it at all. You're just both doing exactly the same thing. And it just seemed everything was going so well. My body felt good. I felt like we weren't pushing too hard. We had plenty of time to do, yeah, the shorter days. It was everything was going so well. We were almost joking about, oh my gosh, this isn't so bad. And then had a few different weather things happen, but I got injured in sometime in June. I can't remember the exact dates, but I took 17 consecutive 0 days. Um,
17. Whoa.
17. And then the two following weeks, I only averaged 23 miles a day because I wasn't walking when I was injured. I was down bad. And
So
I
what was
kind
the
of,
injury?
I I never went to a doctor, so I'm self-diagnosing some kind of, I'm assuming, tear or partial tear around maybe like the labrum where my hip goes, like the femur goes into
Mm-hmm.
your hip or something like that, because I couldn't bear any weight on my left leg. Had a lot of hip flexor area pain and like piriformis issues, and it eventually got better, and then was just something I managed on and off for the entire rest of the year, but it was very manageable. Yeah, but it took me off. It was kind of great though, because I don't know if I could have kept riding on that. Like everything's going so well, crushing
Yeah.
this type of energy that just wasn't going to be sustainable. So it's kind of amazing to get injured and then be crying, whining about how you're not, I just hiked 4,000 miles. Now I'm injured. Now I'm going to go home. Been telling everyone I'm doing this thing. I'm not going to do this thing. Everyone's
Mm,
going to be disappointed. And what am I going to come back out here and hike 4,000 miles again next year just to see? But when you're hurt and you want to keep going, you're like, dude, heal me and I'll never complain again, and I'll just hike and I'll keep my head down and I'll do exactly what I'm supposed to do. I just wanted to get the chance, to keep going. So it kind of wound up being a huge blessing in disguise, because after that, I was just so happy to be moving. And I mean,
yeah.
it ruined my whole life, because you lost 3 weeks, which meant the average had shifted dramatically for what I had to
Yeah.
do.
Astronomically. Yeah.
But yeah, I was glad that wasn't the end.
Would have been a frustrating couple of weeks, just like sitting there waking up every morning, be like, oh, I still can't lift my leg. That's great. Like you, you would have been
So
going
bad. Walking
crazy.
with the cane, the Lecky cane, because Lecky
Yeah, the
makes
peg
these.
leg returns.
Literally. And I was at an Appalachian Trail hostel. So all the northbounders just started finishing. So you're just there every day. People are recognizing me but then you're limping around, and hikers were going into the 100-mile wilderness, doing this whole section, finishing the trail, coming back to the hostel. And I'm like, I'm
Still
still
there.
here every day.
What was your like sort of daily routine when you were out with the injury? Were you doing tests on yourself? Like, can I walk on this today? I know it's going to be another couple of days, because 17 days is a fair while. It must have been like just delays and delays and delays, and you're like, oh, I don't know, am I
It
going
was
to get
so
out here?
bad. It didn't really, the healing process was so slow. It was practically like 13 or 14 days before I was even like not majorly limping. And yeah, like the physical therapist I was working with just thought it was because my body was healing, 4,000 miles of other stuff, and just didn't care very much about healing whatever I did to myself. But it was disheartening. Like every day I'd get up, I'd be like, maybe I'm feeling better, walk down and have breakfast, and then realize you aren't feeling better, lay in bed all day and cry. And I like didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't talk to my parents or update anyone, because I'm like, what am I going to update you on? I'm so
Hmm.
miserable. But I mean, eventually kind of got better, at least enough that I could, do 3 miles or 6 miles, and then be like, okay, maybe I can do 15.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, obviously, you look back on it almost as a bit of a positive thing that happened, but even in the moment, that 17 days would have given the rest of your body such a boost in recovery, to the
Mm-hmm.
point where once that sort of hip flexor sort of issue healed and got better, the rest of your legs would have been roaring to go, and hopefully could carry you pretty far. But you had a long way to make up. I mean, I don't know what the math is on that. 17 days of 0 miles, and then a couple of weeks of
It was
relatively
not good.
low miles. I mean, I just remember I remember following you the last couple of months of the year, and you were doing some miles, so clearly
Yeah.
you were making up for lost time. You mentioned a few people recognized you at the hostel on the AT while you were injured. You were obviously creating content throughout this entire journey, and people got to follow along, which was just super, super cool. I've done a bit of content creation on trails before, and I know how challenging it is at the best of times to pump out stuff, when you're walking big miles, and there wouldn't be many people that would be walking bigger miles than you, and still producing stuff. You were doing like a YouTube video, a reel on Instagram, you're writing blogs, daily at times for all three. I'm very, very interested to hear how you found managing that whilst also averaging, ridiculous miles, and, walking 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Like, there's no time to, to film, to edit, to do all of
Uh,
these, to write. Like, I've done daily vlogs before, but writing on top of that,
yeah.
it's wild. And obviously, like, everyone's super appreciative because it's been super cool to follow along, but how?
Honestly, thank God for the Florida Trail, because I knew that the most important thing was going to be trying to get into a good routine. And the Florida Trail had amenities, regular cell service, and semi-regular places you could stop off to charge. So right off the
Mm-hmm.
bat, you're road walking every day for the first like couple weeks. So I just was like, okay, if I can stay up on everything every day for as long as possible, at least have a chance to keep going. So that was awesome that you can actually, if you're road walking, you can edit a video or write a blog while you're walking. And
Mm.
then once it phased out of that to where, that's not happening every day. It's like, okay, well, today I have to do it all in the hour before I go to bed. And then just trying to, yeah, make it as little time during the day as possible. But I just felt like if I wasn't gonna do it, if I fell behind, I was never going to get caught up again. So it just made it a routine and forced myself to do it like any other part of the day.
Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy doing it? Did you
Yeah,
enjoy the whole process?
I
Yeah.
did. It was cool, and it'll be really cool to be able to look back on all those specific details, especially from times like, yeah, when things were going really well or weren't going well, and just what that headspace and perspective was. Because there were some distinct chapters of the year where you're just, yeah, so tired and your brain is just not operating normally at all. So I'm glad for it. And it was unique to be able to get support from so many people that you didn't know,
Hmm.
and all the time, between all the platforms and stuff, just people kind of sending their prayers and stuff for you, which I mean must have worked because things went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, it's super cool to have that support as you hike a trail. It's almost like a bit of a cheat code, just like the moral support and the like even the self-perceived like pressure that posting gives, because like you're telling everyone every day like what you're going to do and what the mission is, and it's like there's a bit of accountability there as well to like, oh, people are watching and they're kind of like expecting me to do this thing, and so I'm gonna have to do it, which is probably made that 17 days off even more frustrating because like, would I even post, and like I'm not doing miles, and like, oh, people are waiting. It's like it's kind of a I kind of enjoy that pressure because it keeps me accountable to doing the thing I said I was going to do. But yeah, it's such an added logistical challenge on a through hike, especially because there are plenty of sections where there's not a lot of reception for weeks at a time, and not a lot of opportunity to charge, and you're obviously expending more battery than you usually would, and that kind of stuff. Um, so well done, as someone who's has done
Thanks.
some stuff on trail before. It's not an easy thing at all, and it's interesting because I tell people sometimes as well that I'll edit while I hike. Like usually when it's like a nice flat bit of untechnical trail or road walking or whatever it is, it's actually very possible to kind of multitask, and it keeps you distracted when the trail might be a little bit boring or whatever. So it's kind of like almost a good thing in that way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I know you're catching up on a bit of the content now into January, so we're sort of reliving it. Well, you get to relive it, I guess, now that you're home and putting out the final days.
Yeah, it's fun. It was honestly pretty nice when I finished like the calendar year, the border to border triple crown. I had originally not planned on going for 10K. So once I got down to Florida to make those last 1,600 miles, I was like, I just let myself take a week off at first from the videos. And then there's just the miles were so big. I could have been giving, taking the time. I knew I could take the time to do the editing because I did it all year. But it was really nice to just stop and just, for the first time
Yeah,
all year, only focus on the hiking.
yeah. I know you were doing some crazy numbers during that last month or so just to make up the 10,000. Walk me through like exactly the structure of the year. So you
Yeah.
started in Florida and you walked north, and I'm interested to know like
Yeah.
how you sort of went across, because it's through hiking the Triple Crown is very seasonal. Each trail has ideal months for specific sections, especially when you're up in the high country with snow and the desert with the heat. There's a bit of planning involved for sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started January 1st, Key West, Florida, and managed to do a straight continuous path north all the way to New Hampshire. Um, and got to New Hampshire, and it was somewhere toward the end of April. So like way too early. I went through the Vermont. Vermont was pretty crazy snow. Had some moments where I was like, that's dangerous. Could, post holing up
Mm,
to your knee. You're like, could have broken my leg if there was something under there. And yeah, after like 5 or 6 exhausting days of doing that, I was like, okay, no more. I'm going to leave New Hampshire and Maine for last. So went out west to the PCT, got on at the southern terminus, and then went all the way to Kennedy Meadows South because it was also a record snow year, or not record snow year, but a significant snow year in the Sierra, and it was still pretty early.
hmm.
So when I got there was too much snow. But then I came back to the AT. This would have been June or no, end of May, because when I got back to finish New Hampshire and Maine, there was a late May surprise snowstorm, a record
Mm-hmm.
snowstorm, because it never
Okay.
snows that late in the season. And it hit like 72 hours after I got back to the East Coast. So you think
Wow.
you think you can plan around things, you can't. And I got injured in that snowstorm. And then so trying to save time and not hike in the snow cost me 3 weeks off. But then I finished the whole East Coast and went back out. And I was at Canyon Meadows South on the 4th of July. Went north, got up to Ashland, the start of Oregon, and I had done some rough math of what kind of mileage do I have to do to get through Oregon, Washington, and then southbound on the CDT through Colorado before winter. And that's when I realized that I should leave Oregon for last, just finish Washington and get to the CDT as fast as possible. So I did that, got on the CDT southbound, I want to say August 20th, it give or take
Wow.
a day. So really late. The last person I knew of who was southbound was a couple, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before that. And then, yeah, I was just running for my life. I averaged 37 miles a day for 9 weeks, finishing the PCT and doing the CDT to get through Colorado, but got to New Mexico end of the first week of October, and then finished Oregon. Stuck in a snowstorm there, huge snowstorm right when I got to Oregon. So I was in snow every day for all of Oregon, and it was way harder than it was supposed to be. And then finished in New Mexico.
Incredible. It's so much back and forth, isn't it? The logistical challenges of fighting the seasons and all the all the different factors that go into. I mean, just doing one through hike, people have to flip flop, but doing all three is wild. How much of that had you like sort of planned out from the start versus just adapted along the way? Because you can't really plan for the end of the year at the start, can you? And
No.
you don't know what the seasons are going to be like, or the weather, or how many miles you will have gotten done, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I had hoped. I mean, when I first set out, my pipe dream was continuous footpath on all of them, if it was
Mm,
possible. It wasn't something I was emotionally attached to as an idea, but I did think that would be really cool because so few people have done that. And then it's just, I kind of just after I jumped on the AT from New Hampshire over, I just sort of used like that feeling as like a litmus test for all the rest of the flips. Like if I'm so stressed and anxious about weather or timing that I'm thinking about it all day long, then it's like, okay, you should probably do something. And that was all of Northern California on the PCT for me. I was stressed all day, thinking there was just no way I could go fast enough to finish the PCT in time to get through the CDT in time. So jumping there it just made sense. And then, I mean, hindsight, it's just so hard to gauge because you look at what happened 1 year ago, 2 years ago. It's like maybe Oregon's a great place to hike in October. Normally, Oregon actually is a great place to hike in October, but every 3 years, Oregon gets an
mm,
early snow. And that happened to Professor Carl on his border to border calendar year in 2022. And I'd asked him for advice, and he kind of warned me, maybe don't leave Oregon for last. But everyone else from the PCT Trail Angels and stuff were like, I'm from Oregon. You can leave it to the end. We never get snow here. And those same people were like, I'm so sorry I said that. This never happens. I'm like, yeah, and that happened on every trail this year. The thing that never happens is going to happen 6 times.
Jeez, yeah, that kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works, doesn't it? But I mean, that's through hiking. You've got to be adaptable, right? And you had
Mm-hmm.
done so much hiking previously that you're very adaptable and very confident in your ability to sort of get through these challenges. And clearly you did. So it's pretty incredible. How much of a help do you think it was having done all three trials before to coming back and doing this year and overcoming those challenges? Because I guess
Yeah.
knowing what the trail is going to be like, how slow or fast certain sections are going to be, what typical weather would be like at certain times of the year on each of these trails, all of that sort of experience would have been quite useful, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. It's impressive that people can do something like the Calendar or Triple Crown having only done one or two of the trails. I mean, it's not like you have to have done anything before, but there were so many things that it's a cheat code. I mean, the towns, I think of the PCT, Kearsarge Pass, Onion Valley, like the places that you might get out to where you remember from last time, wow, that hitch took 2 hours. Or, you
Yeah.
know, when I was on the going through the Sierra this past year, I carried for 200 miles because I
Wow.
knew how much time it was going to take to go down into the town, get the hitch, get back. So there were some things that I just like wasn't willing to do again, or places I wish I had gone to, or were like such amazing resources, friends or trail angels or things. And then, yeah, I guess areas where it's, Washington on the PCT, there's that section with all the blowdowns, those massive old growth blowdowns. And if you didn't know that, you wouldn't know they're not getting cleaned up. No one's coming in. It doesn't matter how late in the season you're hiking; those are just a fixture. But there's so many things like that where it was super helpful to know. But then on the trade off, there was tons of places where you're mentally thinking, I'm going to be able to go through this section so fast, and you're not carrying food, whatever. And then you get there and some weird thing has happened there, and there's a reroute or a bunch of down trees or something, and you'd kind of assumed that section would be easy and you didn't bring enough food. But X, Y, and Z happened, and it's nothing like it was when you were there before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the nature of what we do, isn't it? It's just things happen, and that's why it's like impossible to plan too far ahead. Let alone a year ahead when you're at the start of something like this. It's just like things are definitely not. That's the one thing you can guarantee. Things are definitely not going to go to plan, and things are not going to be as you expect in every place. And that's part of fun. That's part of the fun of following a journey like something like what you did is like you kind of get all these twists and turns as a viewer as well. It's like a movie, there's the problem that needs to be solved, and then the hero solves the problem, and it's all very, very satisfying and quite enjoyable as well. So you finished the Triple Crown, and then you said you hadn't planned on necessarily doing the 10,000 miles, but thought may as well. Like, what was the mindset there?
Yeah.
You weren't done walking yet.
I had it had crossed my mind to do it. And I think early in the year, we had joked about maybe hitting 9,000 because depending on what route you take on all these different places, you could make it 8,000 miles, 9,300 miles. Like there's so many
Right.
possibilities. But somewhere the last couple of weeks in New Mexico on the CDT, I just finally caught up on rest. I took zeros. I was hanging out with people. I wasn't really super thinking about going for too much more. So I feel like I kind of just let myself lax up and actually rest and got back into like a good headspace. And I was feeling really good and did the math and knew I could definitely do more. So there was the two hikers doing. Originally I thought there was just two hikers doing the border to border Calendar or Triple Crown, and then as the year went on, through like social media, found out that there was a third hiker who was also doing it, but they just did things in a different order than like myself and Punisher had done it. So I met the other hiker Slide, and we wound up figuring out that like he was going to be I knew he would be down in Florida finishing his border to border, and he wanted to hit 10,000 miles, and he had done the math. And I just realized, oh, if I meet you here at the start of the Florida Trail, we'll both hit 10,000 miles by New Year's Eve. So it just seemed, at first I was like, okay, maybe I'll at least hit nine. Maybe I could hit 9,500 because I knew we had to average 38 miles a day for 6 weeks to finish and hit 10,000. So it was like, I probably will, but it's like not as much pressure, I guess. And then just went down there, and yeah, we did the thing. Just did 38 miles every single day for the whole rest of the year.
For the non-Americans, 38 miles is like, I think it's just over 60 kilometers, which is like 12 hours of like walking at a pretty good pace
Yeah.
every day. It's just mental numbers. I feel like having Slide there with you would have been a huge help to have that, I guess, that motivation and accountability for the final push. I don't know if I'm remembering right. I had Jessica Gore on the Stitches on the podcast a
Yeah,
couple months ago, and I think she mentioned crossing paths with him on the CDT or something,
yeah. They
which is
hiked
interesting.
in the like the snowy snowshoed like Colorado together.
Mm. It's so funny when you're following a bunch of like vloggers on through hikes and you get like these weird crossovers and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Cause like even, Jess crossed paths with this other person I know, Lucy Barnard, who I've had in the podcast as well. They crossed paths on the GDT at the end of the trek. And it's just like, when I see all this stuff happening, I'm like, this is crazy. Like I know that person and this person and everyone's doing such cool things. And I was following Punisher as well. He's doing his daily vlogs and did his 10,000 miles as well. It's just like so cool. It must be inspiring being amongst people like that, people chasing after these huge goals and then succeeding in them. And, it pushes you and it drives you to strive for more as well, right?
Yeah, it was a really fun year to be out doing something big, but just, yeah, bearing witness to everything else because there were, yeah, I think of Stitches, and then I mean the two hikers who set out to do the Great Western Loop, who one of them, Stitches, had also met when she was on the CDT, and just all the great FKTs. It was just a really cool year. I mean, there was the oldest person to attempt the calendar year Triple Crown, did like, I mean, everything except for a small, I would say pretty small part of the PCT. Yeah, it was just a great year to be out there. It's always cool. I want to just see people doing, yeah, the biggest, most incredible stuff, things that just put us all to shame, make our 10,000 miles look small, you know?
What do you think the upper limit is for like miles in a year? Because most people listening can't even fathom doing that average per day, especially with 17 days off and whatever ever other amount of zeros you had. You know, doing more, like if everything went perfectly well for you, say like next year, and you had this incredible fitness, like what do you think would be possible?
I think definitely significantly more than 10,000 miles in a
Wow.
year. I mean, just thinking about if I hadn't been, it is impossible to rewrite history like this, but I mean, I took 3 weeks off for injury. So you'd think that's right there is, the difference between hitting 10 and hitting 11,000 miles for the year. And I mean, then you consider I had 2 shorter weeks following the injury and then just all the other things. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. Well, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I can only imagine in the next couple of years, people will exceed 10,000, like 300 or whatever the record is now. But I think 12 or 13, I feel like somebody could do that in a calendar year if everything went perfectly. I guess it would, the real limitation wouldn't be mileage as much as it is where you hiking.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that was like the CDT, I would have done no shortcuts on the CDT and every last mile and every last little side quest. But this year, it's just, you just couldn't do it. It just, you wind up hiking in Colorado in the snow or somewhere else. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not just like 10,000 flat, easy miles either. It's like, you're going over mountain ranges, you're battling snowstorms, you're going through all kinds of crazy elevation changes and different challenges as well. Like clearly, if you just walked like around a track, you could probably hit, way more than
yeah.
10,000 miles in a year. But it's like the logistical challenge, the heavy packs and the food carries, the conditions and the elements, like altogether adds up to be just such an incredible thing. I'm sure you've had plenty of comments from people online. I know I have a lot in the past of people saying, why are you walking so fast? Slow down, smell the roses. What do you usually say to those people? Because like, everyone hikes their own way and enjoys different things. I love walking big miles in the day, and I feel like it allows me to see more over a
Mm-hmm.
year or over a half a year if I'm walking faster because I have more time to do different things. And that's clearly the case with you. If you were
Yeah.
walking slower, you would have seen a lot less cool things in 2025. You would have had a lot less different experiences and probably less growth as a human being. What's your typical response to those comments if you've
Yeah.
gotten any of them? I'm sure you have.
Uh, I get a bunch of those comments. They're it's usually funny because people comment that, but they don't realize that you've hiked the Triple Crown before. And the first time I hiked the Triple Crown trails, I wouldn't say I did any of them particularly that fast. Probably much closer to average, 4.5, 5 months. I think that's pretty typical for a lot of people. So you've seen most of the things before. And then, yeah, it's those same people that say, you never slow down and see anything, but they're they're having shorter days and they're sitting around at camp or sleeping in, and I'm getting up early and watching the sun come up every single day, and you're still taking everything in. And I mean, I did so much social media stuff. I'm stopping to take pictures and videos of every single view. So it's not like I'm blowing by with my head down. Like, I'm taking it all in. And honestly, when you're hiking all day, you're not in a rush because you're not getting anywhere faster by rushing. Everyone thinks you're
Mm-hmm.
running. They're like, oh, you must be jogging a lot of the day. I'm like, I'm just hiking all day and I'm taking as few breaks as possible. But I'm out all day. If I stop somewhere incredible, I'm gonna sit there and take it in. And well, I'm watching the sunset every night, and then I'm hiking into the dark, and you're seeing so many more animals and just experiencing doing the calendar or Triple Crown. You just get to see the trail so much more quiet. So you're getting a taste of something that most people never will. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
love when people say that because they just you could never get mad. It's just an indicator that they just are not have no idea what they're talking about.
Yes, I think that's true. And that for me is one of the things I always bring up is uh, getting up before sunrise and then hiking as it rises and then hiking as the sun's setting before you set up camp is like two of the most incredible parts of every day on trail, being at a viewpoint or on trail somewhere other than camp and seeing those most beautiful parts of the day happen. If you're just
Yeah.
sitting at camp for both of those, you miss out on so much of what you could be experiencing. And maybe you've got a good campsite, and so it's really nice or whatever.
Mhm.
But I feel like those people are often just sleeping in as well and missing that kind of
Yeah.
stuff as well. You just get to experience more. But hey, everyone hikes their own hike as well, so
Yeah.
it's all good. But it is interesting social media. I'm sure you've gotten overwhelming positivity from people, but there's always going to be some that just don't like what you're doing for some reason and they'll want
Yeah.
to tell you about it. So you just got to sort of, I don't know, use it as fuel or ignore it or,
Yeah.
however you sort of manage it. Yeah. Yeah. I've had my fair share over the, over the years. It's good fun, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Like you said, you get to look back on the things that you've done. And for me, like, especially daily vlogging, um, I don't know, if I watch a vlog from a specific day on a trail that I've done, it just jogs all these memories of the little things that happened that day. That's the big thing for me is I don't record every single little moment, but just recording the overarching theme of or the story of each day. I get to be teleported back to that specific day. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened in that town. That conversation happened with that person, and we saw that deer in that forest. It was really cool. Whatever it is, it's just such a gift to yourself to be able to go back and relive those things. And I'm not ashamed to admit I go back and watch my PCT vlogs fairly often just because
Yeah.
it's just like the best times of my life and it's so cool to be able to look back on it. And I think doing something like the calendar year triple crown, like you're walking all day, every day, it's probably very hard to reminisce, on the weeks prior or even the year prior now that you're sitting down, but going back through and watching what you did would just bring all the memories flooding back and be
Yeah.
such a cool thing to witness. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely
Yeah.
worth
It's
it.
worth all the headaches and no receptions and hours editing in the tent.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do it again.
What is next for you? Do you have any big through hiking plans for 2026? Or are you going to take a deep breath and chill out for a bit?
I wouldn't write anything off, but this is the first time, I guess, since 2022 that I ended a hike with nothing planned, nothing
Yeah, it must
crazy.
be
I
a
mean,
weird feeling.
it's it's weird, but it's really nice because I do always feel like there's that feeling of like you have to just keep continuing with the momentum sometimes when you're living like that, which is great. I do think that that's, that type of energy keeps you going and it's kind of contagious, but it's nice to be able to just sort of slow down and get to reassess and
Hmm.
let this actually sort of sink in and hit without just immediately running to the next thing. Like, I mean, yeah, there's a million things in my mind. There's definitely a lot of, yeah, I have tons of ideas, but I just kind of wanted to give it time and, yeah, see how everything settles in, get caught up. Like, I'm like, how could I plan the next thing? I'm not even done with my videos from from last year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
not even allowed to think about anything until I'm at least done with all of that.
What do your friends and family think of all this hiking stuff? Because it's like you've basically committed like 4 years of your life to just hiking and sharing that online, and you're in these dangerous situations, and things that all kinds of things are happening, and they don't always hear from you, all that kind of stuff. Like, what
Yeah.
is what is their thoughts? I know you have a lot of mates in the community, so everyone's probably super supportive in that realm, but I'm just thinking
Yeah.
my family sometimes thinks I'm crazy and is constantly worrying, when I'm off for that reception for weeks at a time, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's really nice having all the friends in the community because yeah, you're always going to have the people you can, springboard things off of whose reaction is more what you need versus what you'd expect from family. I mean, my family's like incredibly supportive as this has been, yeah, spent, I spent 6 months off trail in 2024, but besides that, it's like 2 months here, 2 months there. So, everyone's supportive. Definitely, I mean, my poor dad, I feel like he worries a lot. And he's
Mm.
also like the person who I've just coincidentally called or reached out to like a couple of the times when things were really hairy, and when it was really bad. And so I just feel like if he doesn't get a Garmin message from me at the end of a day or 2 days of just like, I made it to camp, I just feel bad. He is worrying and I mean, talking to him after getting off trail and like both my parents, it's like part of you doesn't feel like you need to worry because I've been doing all this stuff and they know I'm like the best person for the job. Like she knows exactly what she's doing. But yeah, this stuff, you hang around long enough and listen to stories and you realize that there's a lot of stuff you can't plan for. And those like wild card situations are gonna pop up. I mean, probably once a through hike, if not more. But yeah, everyone just thinks it's much more crazy than I could ever, describe it as. I feel like you get too far from it, spending this much time in it. You're too close to
Yeah.
pass judgment on what is crazy. Like I'll never even be able to fully like wrap my head around this year because to me it's not like the craziest thing in the world, which it sounds crazy saying it, but it's just a thing like any other thing
Hmm.
that you just kept doing every single day.
I think in particular when you have a lot of mates who do similar stuff, like you have a lot of friends in the through hiking world, it almost becomes like a normal thing. There's people out there doing this all the time. Like all my friends do it. Whereas you go back to regular life or you hang out with friends and family who this is just not a part of their life. And they're like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I cannot believe you did that. I get that a fair bit as well. And it's kind of nice to have both sides of that, I guess, in your relationships, because you get reminded of it's actually a pretty cool thing that I did. I've also been, sort of been humbled, I guess, by other people who are doing crazier stuff. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've hiked a couple of long trails. I've done some cool stuff, and then I talk to people like Madison Blagden, and I'm just like, okay, I haven't done much, have I? Far out. Yeah, it's interesting. What's like?
Yeah.
I want to know what like the biggest lesson is that you've learnt over the last 12 months on the calendar year Triple Crown, and maybe something that's applicable to people listening that aren't haven't backpacked before, maybe, or haven't thru hiked and are looking to get out onto trail. Because I know there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast who, they want to do this thing, but it is maybe overwhelming to think about or very hard to just start and step on that first mile. What's some experiences and some learnings that you've had that could maybe help people get out there for the first time?
Yeah, well, I feel like a great example of just everything is like you can have zero experience in 2017 and basically have no business being outdoors or in the elements. Like I didn't grow up in an outdoorsy family. I had no knowledge of what I was doing. And then you could like 4 through hikes later, you could do something longer than any other woman's ever done, or close to the furthest that anyone's ever hiked before. So I'd say if worries about how it's going to work for you is the main thing stopping you, that you should just start and just give it all up to the trail. And I think the biggest thing people do is just like resist everything that's happening to you. You're sore, you're uncomfortable, all this stuff is going on, and you do kind of want to fight back against that feeling. And I don't know, you're worried, I won't be able to get this ride to town, the store is going to be closed, this isn't going to have what I need. And as soon as you just stop worrying and just focus on what you're doing and just fully believe it's going to be fine, whether you get the ride into town, maybe you won't, maybe it'll be even better if you don't, because some random person's going to drive by 30 minutes later when you miss your shuttle bus, and they're going to take you back to their house where they have pot roasts waiting for you. Like, if it feels like things aren't going the way you want them to, step out of the way, because something is happening and you are resisting so hard that you're missing it. And anytime this year I started doubting, and I got injured, I was hurt for so long, and I spent so much of that early time being hurt, being like, woe is me, I don't have any idea why this happened to me, this doesn't make any sense, this, and it's, if I'd spent the first week or two of being hurt really believing like there is a perfectly good reason why you're hurt right now, and it's all going to make more sense later. If it doesn't make sense now, it doesn't have to make sense, but it's happening. Just let it happen. And it's honestly like, so I guess people would compare that to just faith, but I'm not like a particularly religious person, but if you just stop fighting and really believe that it's all just going to go how it is, it is. And when you set such high specific expectations, there's so much more room to be disappointed. But if you're not being so, obviously you have goals, you have places you need to be and things you need to do, but if you're not filling in every last blank with a specific thing you're looking for, then you'd be shocked that it's all just gonna line up. It's even better than you'd imagine it. So you don't even have to waste all your energy imagining it, because whatever you think it's gonna be, the universe has a much better plan than you. So just let it do its thing.
I love that. That's awesome. And I could not agree more. Incredible words. I think it's a good place to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on, Madison. I really appreciate you at the time.
No, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, awesome. Where can people follow the last few vlogs that are going up, and then whatever you do next?
Yeah, everything is under Madison Blagden on YouTube, Instagram, the blog, the Trek, Peg Leg, or Madison Blagden. You can find it all out there.
Amazing. All the links will be in the description below for those interested in checking out what Madison's been up to over the last 12 months. And there's a lot of vlogs and content to go back and consume if you haven't watched any of it yet, and it's well worth going back through. Thanks again for coming on, and thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to follow us and rate us 5 stars. Helps the show out a ton, and excited for a big year in 2026. All right, I will see you guys next week. Cheers.